My name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Tom Monroe and Kate Norris. We're at the Southeast Wine Collective in Portland. It's February 14, 2020.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate this. First question, most important question for each of you. Why wine?
Do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
Go for it.
Wine's always been on the table in my life. I grew up mostly in Europe with a mom that's from Madagascar, but a French nationality, and a British father. And wine has been a part of our family celebrations, but also our everyday since I can remember. Thimbles of it, or it watered down with water when I was very, very small. No stigma behind alcohol, having grown up in Europe. And I think it's something that's really delicious that you share. It's something to be enjoyed and celebrated. It's a really happy medium to work with. It brings an immense amount of joy, and it's a really beautiful, translation of our earth at the same time. So it's a combination of all things: art, science, personal feelings, taste, fashion, everything wrapped into one. That's why for me.
So I grew up in the Midwest in St. Louis, and my father was always had wine on the table too. I wouldn't say it was, maybe wines that have as much artisan focus as that we have, because that just really wasn't what was available in St. Louis in the early 1980s. But he always enjoyed having wine around. And then my uncle, who was a little younger than my dad, kind of got tied up with a group of other wine aficionados in St. Louis that were really into Burgundy wines, and they started traveling together as a group. And as I got a little bit older, a few times I was invited over to be like the glass buffer and the cork puller kind of for these guys, and then you get a couple of sips of things there. And at that point, I don't really have any recollection of saying, "Oh, I like wine," but the culture of it and the camaraderie that is brought was something that was immediately attractive and really kind of picked up for me when I was in college. I was a business major, and I took some restaurant, tourism, kind of hospitality classes that included what might be today like a WSET type class. And
drinking in college, paying them to drink in college. Got it.
On like a Thursday afternoon to sample wine.
I think they still have these classes everywhere.
Yeah. And then, after that, just through friendships and the people that I both worked and just kind of hung around, it just became more a part of life, and something that, like Kate was saying, that I felt was a celebration of how we communicate and
it's good speed, isn't it?
Yeah. It really breaks down a lot of barriers to be able to spend time with the people and learn about not only the wines, but about other people. And I think maybe something we should do more of.
So each of you had this kind of natural inclination toward it. Tell me about how it became a career for you.
This is a long story. Should I start
Sure.
with one? Yeah, so Tom and I used to be married once upon a time, and we actually met over wine. Tom stole a bottle of wine from me at a party. It was a long time ago. That bottle that I had come to a party with and looked around and been like, not sure that this is the scene for this. This looks like a beer scene today. So I'd stashed it and then found him drinking it. Fast forward, we enjoyed wine on our first date. Oregon wine, actually. A bottle of Cloudline, which is Dimension's second bottling. Fast forward even more, when we got married on a vineyard in Sonoma. And we served Oregon wine at that Sonoma wedding. Sorry, Sonoma.
Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing, for sure, yeah. Fast forward to there, Tom and I moved back to the Midwest, to St. Louis, where he's from. His grandmother was dying of ovarian cancer, and we wanted to spend time with her before she passed away. And Tom elected to go to business school at Washington University in St. Louis. Grandma Tucker actually died before we got home, though. So right before. Yeah. But we still went to St. Louis, and in the midst of that 2-year program, there was a
big recession.
There was a big recession, it's true,
Yeah.
and also like a business plan competition. That's how I'm telling your story, our story. It's our story.
Well, so the fascination with wine had not gone away, and going to school gave a opportunity to kind of flesh it out a bit more, just from a pure interest, but now also from what does this business look like, and how does it operate, and what are the ins and outs of it? And I can't say that we really had any real inclination to say, oh, we're going to do this, but it was something that was just like, well, if you're going to put all this energy into learning how to formulate the right business plan and to vet all the kind of various components about it, might as well do something you like. And
so Tom decided to write a business plan on starting a winery. For the final business. How many kids were in? I shouldn't call them kids. I mean, you guys were all older, but you were kids. How many kids? How many business plans were there? Can't remember.
I think there's about 15 of them.
15 total. Yeah. And
then
then,
we were groups of 2 to 4.
And then I got to help with the project. I was working in event planning and catering, which I had been working in for a long time. And we wrote this business plan on how to start a winery. And Tom presented it with the team. I got to go watch. It was apparently according to the judges, who are all sort of local business people, it was the best written business plan, but the return on investment was...
Didn't win.
so we got second place.
We can affirm that they were right.
Yeah,
That's a solid foreshadowing.
But, yeah, exactly. But they said it was the best written plan.
Yeah.
So second place it was.
The research was definitely
intense and good. Yeah. Fast forward a little bit, and Thomas was looking at jobs coming out of business school. He'd been working in banking before and a little bit of investment banking during school. And the recession started to hit really hard.
Really bad.
And
I was doing these almost weekly trips to New York
for group interviews.
Well, and all sorts of different stuff, and just talking to everybody, and literally during that time that I was doing this over the 6 months, at least a quarter of those businesses just were large names went away. And it was I have still the letter of a job offer I got for a company that a month later was...
Well, no, I mean, even more intense than that. It was Bear Stearns, and literally, Tom, we have the letter. We should frame it. Because they literally set up the appointment for him to go get his blood test done, and he turned up, and all the doors were locked at the place. And then in the news, it turns out that the bank was under, and then there were some options to maybe move to Houston or Dallas, maybe Cincinnati, Houston or Dallas, or Cincinnati or Cleveland, and I was like, no, none of these things. So
it was a really dark time.
It was bad
for the economy and for the world, really.
But we had an opportunity.
Yeah. And this little kind of grain of sand of opportunity came our way through her family's friends that owned a vineyard in the Haute-Loire to come spend the season with them. And we weren't really very busy at the moment. So it seemed to me, at the very least, it was going to be a nice place and a nice way to
ride out the recession.
Out a few bad months of the recession and kind of figure out what to do next.
Well, I like to say that if it was something that we loved when we went to start to learn how to make wine, then maybe it could be the rest of our lives. And if it's something that we absolutely hated, then nobody will get at. Then nobody, including ourselves, would ever say it was a waste of time, right? It was a good way to take a pause, do something we were super interested in.
We were at the right age for it. We're late 20s or so.
Yeah, mid-20s for me.
Right around 30 maybe. But yeah, it was a good spot in time to kind of do a little exploration of, and we were very fortunate that her family kind of helped us have that time when it would have been very complicated to get by.
Yeah, I mean, being an event planner, there was no way people were going to hold big parties anymore, even if they had the money.
Yeah.
Both of our jobs were like, oof. So we moved to the house in France that is my family's. We took Cass, our dog, and we started to go to school in the southern area of Burgundy, northern Beaujolais, so the Mâconnais and then Juliana, Fleury area. And then we would go back to Auvergne, to the Haute-Loire. We'd sort of do like class studies and field trips, and then go and do practical work. And that was for almost a year. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there was like a come home for the holidays kind of moment and figure out what to do next. And
we ended up in San Francisco.
Very Griswoldy style, just kind of like loaded up the car and drove west.
Yeah.
And this was really the only place that was considered.
Well, the way that it was considered was really interesting. Well, not only did we have Oregon wine sort of in our past, but we went to a really famous restaurant in the East Bay. It was for a special occasion. We were dirt poor. And so we went on a Monday.
Did we go to lunch?
No, we went to the dinner, which was $50.
Monday, it was all at that time, and especially with the economy this is Chez Panisse, Alice Waters' really famous restaurant. But because things were so struggling, they had gone to this like tiered system where like Monday was this much to do at 3-course, and by Friday and Saturday they had like the regular.
It's actually
option.
Still that way.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I recently went back. No, but I don't know if it started then, but I think that Monday was very inexpensive at the time for what it is. And we sat down with the sommelier, who is still the sommelier there today, Jonathan. And the main part of the meal was seafood choucroute garni.
Yeah.
Dessert was baba au rhum. I think the first course was a salad. Ding ding. Anyway, we were like, we have money for 1 bottle of wine. Here is our budget. This is what we can spend, and we need 1 bottle. And he recommended a bottle of Evesham Wood Pinot Noir. And Evesham Wood is Russ Rainey, now owned by a different family, and it was mind blowing. We'd never tried.
Well, an email came out of that. I never had ever emailed a winemaker before, but it was just one of those things where like, this is really special, and just sent a note saying, hey, this was a really great wine, and learned from that Russ grew up in the same community I grew up in St. Louis.
And then he and Mary and Aiden invited us to stay with them.
Yeah.
So we literally went up and stayed with people we never met before. We talk about like community and collaboration. This is it for us, right? And he drove us around for 4 days,
and then arranged this, or got us invited. I don't remember exactly, but this dinner at Brian and Jill O'Donnell's house in Belle Pond.
Yeah.
And at that dinner was Steve Dorner from Christum.
We played ping pong.
Scott Wright.
Yeah,
and it was like this.
And we're just 2 kids.
of the. I would say the second generation of the Oregon wine industry, but the people that were definitely the ones making waves at that point in time, and who were in like the primes of their careers.
Yeah, and everyone was just so happy to have us around.
You can't get sold on that. I don't know.
It was like I was like, the Kool-Aid is delicious. I've got it. Like we're in. He took us to Bethel Heights, and we hung out with Pat Dudley. We walked the vines with her. He drove us over to Eola Springs Vineyard. We've been working with that vineyard since 2010 now. Yeah. I have no idea why he was so nice to us. No, I do, because he's nice. Yeah. That's what it is. And he just saw 2 kids that were interested.
And unbeknownst to us, he was actually looking for the next generation of his winery, and
he was like,
trying to find some, probably family or. That would be the right fit. And, ultimately we were way too inexperienced, and that wasn't what we were ready for. But it was an incredibly, powerful way to get introduced to the Oregon wine industry, and to seeing that there is a career in this that can be, made, and kind of that light was, I think, pretty attractive to
Yeah,
us.
I mean, you could taste it in the wine, and then when you got here, you could see it was true, and that was pretty awesome. So we went back to France, did some more work there, and then said that Oregon was it. And so we moved out here. Actually, it's the 14th of February today. It was March 1st, 2010. So it's 10 years in less than 16 days, 15 days. It's 28. I don't know. It's a short month.
It's
a weird
year.
month, right? I don't know what's going on with this month. 2 weeks from now. It's 10 years exactly. We rented an apartment in the Pearl that we'd never seen before. It was the bottom of the economy, a sublet. Yeah, it was like a let of a let. And Portland was in a really quiet place at that time. The restaurants were starting to close.
But that creative community here was
still
just starting to really, I guess, Le Pigeon was, Gabe Rucker was starting to really make waves, and
there was sort of opportunity. Portland was at this point where it was still rough and still raw, but a city of makers, and the downturn in the economy had sort of gotten rid of one layer of growth, but created room for more growth.
It was definitely, people talk to me sometimes about old Portland, and
it was right at the end.
Into that, the beginning of New
Portland, yeah.
Because there was still, especially on the east side, that feel. I mean, you would drive down this street here at Division, and
all there was Laurel Kitchen, Pock, and the Oregon Theater. 2 of them are still there.
Yeah.
Oregon Theater's never going away. That's fine.
Adult movies and Vietnamese wings.
Yeah, it's delicious. Anyway, so we arrived here, and first we said we weren't going to make wine right away. We said we would try to get jobs in the industry and just sort of find our footing. I got a job working hospitality for Penner Ash. Tom got a trade job for Methven Family Vineyards. Basically, we decided then within minutes that we were going to make wine.
Well, we weren't. So she had gotten the job in hospitality, and it was pretty slim pickings, especially because we didn't really know very many people. And so we'd done some, helping out at bottlings and helping out at other little projects, because that's really what most of the wineries could afford at that point in time. We were like, yeah, we got a week of work, and hey, can we give you a case of wine instead of paying you?
And we're like,
a lot
sure.
of that.
We still have some of that wine.
Yeah, probably.
It's mostly 2007s.
But Chris Luberstedt, who was then the winemaker at Methven Family Vineyards, I don't remember how we got connected, but he was like, yeah, we just took on a couple of new custom crush clients, and we could actually use the help, but the owner of the vineyard
won't pay
really
you.
let me pay, other than for a couple of weeks during the harvest time, so everything else would have to be in trade. And so it started off as this, basically almost like a mentorship. He was extremely helpful to the both of us, and we had then gotten these trade grapes and ability to make the wine without a lot of entry costs, and we were naive to know that there wasn't any costs beyond the actually making of the wine is the easy part.
But it was exciting. It was super exciting.
I think it was 6 bottles or barrels.
It was 6 barrels to start off with,
4 Pinots and 2
Chardonnay, and we babied those things. Yeah. I looked at them every day.
It seemed like so much wine. It was just what are we going to do with all these 250 cases of wine?
A couple hundred cases.
Yeah.
So I continued working for Penner Ash, and then Tom and I went to release our first wine in 2011. We released on July 28th, 2011, our first rosé, actually.
Yep, and we were really fortunate to get him. So one of the clients that was at the Methven Vineyard was Jay McDonald of EIEIO. He doesn't have any more, but he had this tasting room in Carlton. And he was going to hold a book signing for Catherine Cole's new book at the time, and
Was it the Voodoo Vintners book, or is the one before that?
I think it was the Voodoo. It wasn't
Yep.
the biodynamic book.
No, that's the biodynamic one. It's the one before.
Yeah, it's the one before. So, so he invited, and he was like, "Hey, it's your first wine. Come over and pour it." And Catherine really took a liking to it, and she put a little article about it out
In Mix Magazine, which was Mix Magazine.
And that just kind of like, it was just enough ammunition to get a few people to buy
To open the door.
18 cases we made or something. I don't remember.
We
It
used to
was
go.
something so
We used to go
small.
on guerrilla sales trips where we would like turn up at restaurants,
Oh, we did
hang
for years.
out, and then open a bottle of wine and talk to the bartender and just leave. I mean, yes, years of just
Yeah.
going around, spending more money than we were making, but trying to get people to
Running
try the
up
wine.
credit cards and stuff.
Yeah.
But like we
Still run out.
really didn't know anybody. Like we got to know people,
Mm-hmm.
but like some of the people that were our age that had started brands
Mm-hmm.
or who were working in the industry, they were like, or they'd worked in the restaurants in Portland for years, or they'd worked as a sales rep for a distributor, or they'd worked for another winery, and kind of got the contacts through that.
Yeah, no, we were
And,
just
like,
two
we were
strangers.
true outsiders.
And it's something you don't do unless you're 28 and 30 anymore. Like,
Yeah.
or maybe you do, but it's like, let's move somewhere where we don't know a soul.
But
Just
I mean,
go
it was
for
a ton of perseverance, and it was also a bit of timing where like the world started to get a little bit better, and we kind of got to ride that up.
Well, we did, yeah, but
Yeah.
at the same time, what was interesting is the wine world was still a little bit slower. The 2007s were slow, so we're selling very slowly because it had been panned in the press. The delicious vintage, right?
Yeah.
The 2008s people were super excited about because the sun had started shining again, so people had a fair amount of backstock. The grape prices had started to drop a little bit, and you know what? At the end of the day, that recession actually created opportunity for us. It created.
We were able to get into vineyards that we would not have been able to get into with
because
the
there was
experience level.
Because there was availability, and we were then, able to get in on this place, which is the Southeast Wine Collective, sort of as the recession was creeping out of it. There's no way that we would be able to afford this place these days. It's not a
was
thing.
Definitely like a kind of
Luck and timing.
coupled with
Hard work.
and the energy you have when you're young enough and foolish enough to go do something.
Yeah, fearless. I think let's say fearless. Foolish sounds reckless.
And then I guess I think which would be kind of a cool transition is this also kind of corresponded in a time when there was a growing interest in things other than the kind of classic wines that this region was known for.
And that's actually what the recession brought also is the price point of Burgundy and the price point of a lot of older world wines that were well established was suddenly too expensive for people to drink out.
Yeah.
And so
at least with as much frequency.
Yeah, so they started to look to other varieties, especially to the Beaujolais. Especially
where
we had just gone to school, and we had a giant interest in Gamay, and so that sort of trickled down into United States interest in finding things for the list that weren't such big names, that were really well priced to quality valued.
It's funny because like we made Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and a little bit of Rosé the very first year because that was kind of like what we got. But working at Methvin, they had
A couple rows right by the winery.
An acre and a half of Gamay that was. They were just putting it in the Pinot Noir into their biggest blend. They didn't really know what to do with it.
It was under the 10% threshold, all of the things. So
we had kind of said, well, the first year in 2010, they're like, well, let us make a little bit of this because it's just crazy not to make Gamay.
I know, and it sold right away.
Yeah, they sold it right away, and then the next year they said, okay, well, we'll share the block with you. So we made our first Gamay in 2011, and we have shared the block with them ever since.
And then that 2011 bottling of Gamay, well priced, different varieties, sold really easily.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, and it sort of had our mind clicking not only in terms of sort of what the scope of Oregon and the Willamette Valley could look like, but also the scope of the American wine drinker. that there was room for in this valley, lots and lots of Pinot and some other things too. So
Yeah.
that's kind of our starting point, I guess.
Yeah, I remember though, like the first times I was trying to sell that, there was obviously like curiosity, because you're like, oh, okay, but there was a big resistance by certain people to buy it, because they're like, who will buy this from me? And we, it was maybe to some degree a hand sale or a more like, you got to find the right buyer kind of thing.
But that has changed.
But that changed a lot, and it was the same way at that point in time actually with Chardonnay too, which is just now like Oregon Chardonnay is one of the hottest things there is, and these things were a part of our kind of like DNA from the really very first parts of the business, and it's I guess we feel fortunate that I would never say that we were like, oh, this is what's going to be big in 10 years or 5 years. We were not thinking like that at all. But what we were thinking about was that these are varieties
that we love to drink.
We love to drink, and we had just had experience with working with in France, and we're like, there's too much similarity here in climate and growing conditions to not
especially to the Auvergne region, not necessarily the Burgundy, but especially to Auvergne
and the Loire.
Yeah, the Loire too. Yeah.
So it was just these. So it I guess gave us a more experimental like mindset than maybe somebody who had only either trained in Oregon or trained in Burgundy or trained in California, who like their frame of reference is like, oh, this is what you make here, and don't get me wrong, like you make Pinot Noir here, that's what it is always, and for many good reasons why it's the anchor grape of this region. But for us it was like, well, there seems to be like in the frontierian mindset a lot of room for other things too,
and a beautiful history that is not that long. 50 some odd years. It feels like a really long time to everyone that has been fighting the good fight, but if you look at the rest of the wine world, it's a blink, and so we are really, I think, in a position within our valley to be able to sort of continue to play and continue to keep that sort of pioneering spirit when it comes to grapes.
Yeah.
So that's how we became known as the Gamay Kids, I guess.
I think this is still his first question.
Second, but you guys are doing great.
Oh, we are? Okay. Okay, great.
I'm just, no, this is what I was crossing. I was like, go here.
Okay. So we're doing okay? You're checking them off.
Great. So I'm curious, backing up for just a moment here, you mentioned having this special bottle of Evesham Wood at this restaurant. Why was it special? You guys had wine before. What was it about this bottle
It had such spirit and soul.
Yeah, it was, we were had spent a lot of time in California, and I hate to
bash on Cali.
But at the time, and at the time, what most people had accessibility to or were drinking were these kind of like formulaic wines that were the Napa style, Sonoma style. There was like a lot of oak and a lot of richness.
And I think that some of the more indie sort of experimental California producers didn't have a loud microphone, right? And there was no social media. There was no way for us to be able to really discover them unless you spent a lot of time researching.
Yeah.
And so people like Steve Edmonds and
they were flying under the radar.
They were flying under the radar unless you were in the know.
There was people there for sure that were doing really cool stuff, but like
we were not in the know.
For the most part, we were not. We didn't have much experience with that. So what we did have experience with was this was so much different. It was just kind of like, whoa, like this is possible here.
And so it had like touch points on things that we had enjoyed drinking in France. It had this beautiful sort of bright acid, low alcohol quality that is how Tom and I love to drink. And it was just it was just a surprise to us, and not that we didn't love Oregon Pinot already. I mean, we sort of Domaine Drouin wedding, but it was
We
just.
didn't still have very much experience with organ picking
No,
there really wasn't much available, like outside, especially living in California or in France. Like those weren't places you went looking for organ wine. So anything that we really got from here was, mailing lists, or find the bigger wineries at certain small independent wine
Or my
shops.
dad would collect a few Oregon Pinots and he'd open them up for us every once in a while.
It was still kind of the main producers of that era that were, who had distribution, and it wasn't like Evesham Wood is a perfect example of this. The few small family wines, artisan wines that were kind of escaping the Oregon boundaries, and not every bottle was going to a mailing list or a wine club member or something like that.
I remember the wine had a little bit of like a higher VA point. Like it was a little bit, like it wasn't like technically perfect in the way that you think of like the chemistry of wine, but it was so delicious. Just remember loving it. Yeah, and it was alive, in its own way. And so yeah, I think we both fell in love with that bottle. Yeah.
Tell me about the experience of learning wine at that point. You had a wine background, but then you went to actual school to learn how to make it, and then you started kind of accidentally making it yourself. So tell me about that process of learning to make
liking wine is nothing like learning how to make it. It was definitely a crash course in the realities of, and I mean, there's all sorts of jokes about, winemaking is 90% cleaning and 8% this and 2% drinking beer, and but the work is very hard, and it is so not romantic. It's very physical, especially at the harvest time.
It's very mental also.
Yeah,
I mean, you're creating...
Timing is all I've talked to people in the brewing industry, and not that they want to do this, but if they mess up like a batch,
they just open the valve.
It goes down the drain, and they boil some more, barley and put in some more hops, and the thing that is so cool and magical about wine is there is no magic formula. You can kind of make a wine formulaic and rough out the edges and have a style to it, but there is no way to capture it again. We're not making Smirnoff.
Yeah, Tom and I have an analogy that winemaking is like a wall full of switches, just light switches, and there's on and off for each one, and you have to decide which ones are on and off. But you can't go around switching the same one on and off and on and off and on and off. It's a one-time decision, because if you do this, people can taste it.
Yeah.
So you have to go with your gut. You have to go with your experience. You have to go with your taste. And then at the end of the day, after you've made all of those decisions and you haven't slept and you've spent all that money, you then have to go out into the general public and say, "Do you like me too?"
Yes. And sometimes
it's no. And then you have to do it again.
Yeah.
So
and you have one shot at it each time. Every vintage is one shot to do it. And if you would have asked that question 10 years ago, it would be a slightly different answer, but I think literally there is no substitute for the experience. There is no way to get what decisions we made at that point in time were truly intuition and the little bit of training we had that kind of affirmed that, well, if you do something like this should happen, but it really doesn't ever do that.
And then every year is different, and we are at the mercy of Mother Nature. So those decisions that we are making are based on parallels that are never exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so...
But you get to learn the ins and outs of vineyards and their kind of
quirks,
yeah, and how they,
react.
How they work with warm years and cool years, and how the rain affects them, and what that means when they're in the cellar, and it gives you
parameters, right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. you get a working range of going, well, we know this is kind of the direction things will go.
But you don't get the same result every time. Yeah. And if you're getting the same result, that's really, I don't know how you would do that actually, unless you were following some kind of recipe. But that's also the beauty, so. What was the question?
It was about
learning and making what?
And there's when you go out and present wines, and like the people who, especially who write about wine and who market it, they like to use lots of adjectives and things to like talk about, like, oh, it's like a Bing cherry or whatever, and and then you go taste with somebody who just wants to get their bottle to take home and have dinner, and they're like, well, I don't taste Bing cherry, or I don't get that, and they're like, well, how do you know that? Well, and the only thing I guess that I can say to this, and it's like the making of wine, and it's like of loving wine and drinking it, is there is no shortcut to doing it a lot. So if you try a couple thousand wines over and over and over,
you'll taste the Bing cherry at some point.
You'll start to get the differences between them, and if you try, making wine from the same place for a couple of dozen years, you're going to get better, or at least more knowledgeable.
More knowledgeable, hopefully better, right?
Hopefully better, but at least more knowledgeable.
More knowledgeable. And that experience is really wonderful because it allows you to make decisions a little faster. It allows you to see patterns. But the best part about making wine is it's never the same.
Never.
Like, we have a job that is never the same from day to day.
Dull world, if that's what
yeah. So this is not a job for desk jockeys, right? Like, this is like, if you're
There's
into
actually so many stories too of people who have come to wine because they they enjoy it, and then they try to make wine or do it, and they're just like, this is just too
Risk.
I can't deal with the uncertainty, right, perfect word of it, and the wines that I have to make require me to have to make a lot of more heavy-handed decisions.
Than the wines
I don't like my own wine. So it's like they're out and they go back to drinking somebody else's wine.
It's I think the process of learning. We're the person we learned with, so Michel and Annie Sauvat, that are based in Boude in the Haute-Loire. They are just incredible people. Vintage in France is very interesting. They have certain parameters they have to hit in terms of alcohols, in some regions in terms of color of the wine. So there's more stresses there, even more so than in America. That's one thing I've learned, making wine in France. Not fun.
Well, the bureaucracy.
For the bureaucracy at all.
I mean making
fun,
wine itself is amazing, but the bureaucracy
is just,
ours
we're
isn't-
lucky in America.
Yeah, ours isn't overly challenging. I mean, there is definitely regulations and controls, but it's very restrictive. They have created a system that is protective of what they feel like the ideal or classic
Standard.
wine should be from a certain place. And there is something to be said about that has meant that people have gotten very good at doing things within that framework because you don't have the latitude to go outside of
Starting to, though. So the last 10 years have changed in France with people going to Vin de France.
Yeah, that's because the wine market's more global now.
Yeah.
It used to not be like that. It's like now the options that the consumer has globally, the wine could come from so many different places.
And people don't necessarily care if it has the appellation on it anymore.
AOC or DOC or...
The people that we made wine with, literally, I don't think we realized at the time, but we're low intervention winemakers, So Tom and I always laugh that that's the only way we know how.
Yeah, there was no fashionable word like natural wine.
No, it was just, this is how you make it,
this
is what you do, and it'll be a little different every year. Go for it.
Yeah.
And don't do too much. Don't do too little.
Yeah. Take care of your grapes.
Take care.
Don't scorch your earth.
Make sure not to be lazy with your topping. Make sure that you're monitoring all the things.
Be clean.
Be really clean, but don't add shit. And then we came here and we're like, oh, that has a title?
Yeah. It became an Instagram buzzword.
It did, yeah.
and it's been really, really, I guess, interesting to be kind of see that happen from our perspective, because of the way we've approached wine, we have been kind of brought into that culture, I guess. But it's nothing Kate and I ever really looked for. We weren't saying, oh, we want to
hitch our wagon natural winemakers.
It's the
we will make really good wine that we don't have to do too much, that starts in the vineyard and tastes like the vintage.
Yes. And it's the part of human culture of needing to have like a tribal connection, kind of like, this is my group, you know? And so I totally understand that, because like what we were talking about earlier with where California wine was when we really started getting into wine, this was become the like pendulum swing to the opposite direction.
And it happened sort of at the same time as us moving here, right?
Yeah.
And so the new California was starting to really take off. So you have, people like Brock, you have Lyoko, you have Leviathan, and so that was sort of an upswing.
But then people like Ridge and Steve Edmonds who've been doing it like that their whole career.
But but it's interesting, sort of more about timing, right? That we sort of arrived back doing a thing that was starting to be done as a bigger group. The timing was really good for us.
So you've got some wine now. You've got some Gamay you're building into. So tell me about the brand, growing division, naming it, I guess, for one thing, and then deciding on what comes next.
Well, it got easily named by the street that we're on right now.
And that's sort of a joke,
It was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing. I'm sorry. I
No.
I was thinking about when we were doing this, because we had like taken a photo of the street sign around the time when we were naming the winery. And there was this kind of like, decision amongst us that like, it's a, divide and conquer, and there was this division of labor that we had and all these little things, and we live here. And then we had just come from France where you like name your winery based upon like the area you're from.
Not after yourself, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at most major wine brands of the past, it says where it's made, and then the person's name is tiny. So we're like, we'll just name a division because that's where it's made, And then and now it's the perfectly named winery because we are now divorced. Yeah. So,
Touche.
But we're still doing it. So almost as much time to as a couple as not a couple now. So which is pretty impressive for me.
Impressive you managed to stay together in business.
And still talk like this.
It had its moments.
Still does.
Yeah.
So
fewer of them, thankfully.
So the division started off Pinot Chardonnay, and some Pinot Rosé, a little bit of Gamay, and then we moved. We did 2 years down at Methven, and then we decided we were going to get our own spot, and so we moved here, Division Street.
And we were still too small to kind of incorporate this space on our own. We did not have the operating experience or the wherewithal financially or
to take it on by ourselves.
To take on this by ourselves at the time.
So we invited a few other winemakers that were sort of in our same mindset, same sort of size. One of them was a little bit bigger, in order to be able to share in the production space. And then the area you're sitting in right now became what we called our tasting bar.
And the Southeast Wine Collective was born out of that.
Yeah.
It was very much. I guess in many ways what Portland was kind of known to, it was born out of necessity. It was we all needed a place to be able to do what we wanted to do. That place didn't exist. None of us could handle it individually. Most of the wineries in the valley didn't want folks like us in their place.
Yeah, and then we also thought it'd be important that a lot of custom crush facilities are a little bit more quiet about who's making wine there. We're like, why don't we be the opposite?
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about it?
So it became like an incubator in a sense for our own, and we kind of looked at it like, the voice we'll have as a group will be bigger than the voices that we individually have right now, because nobody knows who any of us are. And
that was also the thought behind having it in town, is that at that time I think we were going to be the,
fourth or fifth winery in town.
In town, but then in the valley it would have been in the hundreds, right? So
At that point it was nearing in on 500.
And we're like, why would anyone drive down there to come visit us?
Well, I think one of our first wineries, and he was a great winemaker and a great friend of Vincent Fritchie from Vincent Wine Company, and he was here, and I love, it's so cheesy, but he would say, well, let's let the grapes do the commuting, and it was just like,
it's adorable.
Always think about that, and he put that like in his first newsletter when he was here or something like that. That's how I've always kind of thought about it. There was 5 of us that were making wine.
Yeah, and then the next year there were 10.
and we've been out of space ever since. And it's been the opposite problem for every year except the first one.
Yeah. But we were lucky. It was 2012 that first year, and we had just opened the winery just in time. We had our opening party. We had one ferment going in here, and we had a couple hundred people in here to say hello the first day. And then I remember the 2012 growing season and harvest just being really warm and
It was rapid. It's so dry.
but it was easy. And I think back, and if it had been a tougher year in terms of weather,
yeah, because the 13 was really hard.
But at least we had 1 year under our belt. So we have the tasting barn here. We have the winemakers out there. There's over 170 tons that come through the door.
It's a bit nuts.
Yeah, it is a little bit insane. Plus,
we've got 2 other places we're renting like additional capacity
storage
for barrel storage. We have an RV slip that we keep all our crush equipment. We've got crap everywhere, like all 5 quadrants of Portland.
We do. Yeah, we've outgrown the space for sure.
It's definitely like become a bit more challenging from the production spec, as the winery has grown.
But at the same time,
but it's home.
It is home and it's ours. And what we like to say, sorry, you have a burr on you, is that the division in the Southeast Wine Collective kind of provided platforms for each other. When we opened this place, the number one thing I said is that if we're going to make wine in town, I want people to know it's good wine. Because when you make wine in an urban setting, people automatically think that you make it in your basement, in your bathtub, and that it's not going to be good, right?
We definitely felt that more with the people that would come to see us in the beginning. I mean,
it's different now.
It's different now.
It's changed.
It's the same as like Gamay's different and Chardonnay's different. And all
but I think if you put
change.
enough effort behind it, and we decided that we would, have some really good producers in here with us, that we would have PR and that we would hire somebody to help us spread the word of how delicious this place was.
So, and she kind of made a really good point there. It's just like, well, how do you legitimize yourself? Well, you put yourself in front of legitimate people. So we would have the likes of like Adam Campbell come here and taste and bring the Elk Cove crowd, or we'd have Brian O'Donnell come, Bell Pond, or we'd have whoever, like a lot of really
people that we'd met in that first,
Jason Lett
dinner.
And have Irie here, and I mean these are the people that
inspire us
for sure, and that we look up to as
and it was an honor for them to say yes, and to say that they'd come and hang out, and they'd bring their crowd, and their crowd would meet our crowd, and then
maybe make our crowd a little bit bigger.
maybe introduce some people to their crowd too. Probably not, they're all really famous. But yeah, so we worked really hard at it. We did events, like 2 events a week, every week, for years. Years.
A bit overwhelming.
It was overwhelming, but I really, the thought is I really wanted us, if we were going to do this, that we were going to do it right, and we were going to put every ounce of our being into making it so people understood that we weren't making wine in our bathtub.
Yeah. And then we traveled like crazy. We still do, to try to spread the gospel.
On Division. In 2013, we decided to really diversify the line for Division. We'd made a little bit of Gamay Rosé in 12. We made a little bit of Nouveau also, and we decided that we were going to start looking at making some Chenin. We'd had an opportunity in 2012 to make this little Cab Franc blend. Our friend Jesse Skiles, who has Fausse Piste Winery, wanted to use our press but didn't have any cash to give us to use it, so he gave us some fruit that he had that was extra.
Some
Cab from Outlook, some Monroe Cab Franc. So we made a wine that we'd never made before, and we called it Beton, which means cement. We made it in our cement fermenters at the back of the winery. It's now our largest production wine. We started making some carbonic Pinot Noir. We released 5 extra wines that year under the Division Village line, and then we've grown that line ever since. Sort of into...
Yeah, we did the first vintage of it was maybe a total of like 700
cases, yeah.
So, but it's about 4,500 now, something like that. Yes.
So that's how Division has grown. And then in 2013, Tom he got me a gift. He got me a ton of Cornas Clone Syrah from Southern Oregon. So I started my line, which is called Gamine. And that's grown to 4 SKUs now. So it's Syrah, Carbonic Grenache, Grenache Rosé Petnat, and Aligoté. And then in 2017, Tom started his wine project, which is called Nightshade. He makes Nebbiolo. So I think, people oftentimes ask how many varieties we work with. It's almost 20.
Well, maybe not 20. We've got definitely more than 20 SKUs.
It's 27 SKUs,
Nice.
Well,
Grape varieties, I think I counted the other day, was like 9 or 10.
No, I think it's more than that with the ore wines too. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's more than that.
Oh, those wines.
Those wines.
Well, so one of the founding members here, kind of who came in off the street and was just like, I want to learn to make wine, and we've been, assisting making those wines for the last 8 years, I guess, and those varieties are even, more ones that we don't work with vision, but we got experience with working in everything from like Sangiovese to Blaufränkisch.
Yeah, the 20 is for the collective.
Yeah, for sure.
For the collective. I think we got up to 22 varieties in here. So,
nuts.
yeah.
How do you manage that many people in this space?
It's hard.
It's hard. Tom and I have PhDs in Tetris.
And we
actually have some really great people that work here.
You met Drew when you first came in.
Alex.
Drew, yeah, we've got, the team has really, I guess, improved over the time that we've done this. When we started, we had one of our friends kind of helping us out, and he did a great job, but it just became bigger and more challenging, and it takes a lot of energy to be able to kind of
juggle
the personalities and juggle everybody's needs. And so we have thankfully been able to get, a really good team all around. Our team for the wine bar here is amazing.
Yeah, and we have a great group of winemakers too.
Yeah.
And also with those 20 varieties, it makes for a really long spread out harvest. It's actually, it's better than 10 winemakers making all Pinot. Because we can start early with some sparkling and end really late with some Cab Sauv. So, yeah, so actually a little bit of masochist in that we have some of the longest harvest seasons of all time, I think. But
I ran into Jay Summers, who's just sold J. Christopher recently, but he was talking to me about, because they had made very different varieties. He's like, it was just time, and I 90-day harvests were starting to kind of wear me down. I was
that's what we do.
I was like, I know all about 100-day harvests.
Yeah.
And
there was one year we were still making wine on Christmas Day.
The only thing I actually do know. And then we have winemakers in here who maybe make one variety or two variety, and their harvest is like 2 weeks.
2 weeks long, or friends of ours down in the valley that are all in and done in a month. And I'm like, how does that feel?
Yeah.
Maybe one day. I don't know. Well, not yet. We're not dead yet. So then division. So that's how those grew. Or a winery that walked off the street. We were purchasing a brand this year, so we're going to be growing even more, which I'm excited about. Some fun, different varieties and new opportunities for us too. And then in the meantime, the wine bar and restaurant side, we turned into a fully named restaurant 2 years ago, just over. It'd been operating as a restaurant for like 3 years before that.
But it got its identity in 2017.
Yeah, I said we have the longest soft opening of all time, 3 years. We is what it's called, and we have an incredible group of people from Althea who you can hear listening to Michael Jackson back there. I don't know if it's coming through. And Ben, they're getting ready for Valentine's Day service tonight. Then we have Elissa and Liz, our managers, Shauna and Davis, who work our bar shifts. We have some amazing bussers, Amanda, Sean, Brian, Casey. So they're all family. And we operate a full-blown restaurant and a full-blown winery in the same space in 5,000 square feet. So, but the food's really good. The wine's not that bad either. So.
I'm curious, going back to your well-written but poorly thought out, perhaps, business plan in school. Was any of this in it? Was this part of your original plan?
So it was more classic in the sense of being based in the Willamette Valley. What was really helpful from it was like the financial models that were created from it, and just the like basic question strengths. How do we look at this?
And then something that was in there that I think is different from some other wineries is that I had this event planning background, and so we had a big event program built into our model, which I don't necessarily
definitely got into this place.
Which I don't know is necessarily how a lot of wineries were operating at the time. But
the multi-user, multi-member, multi-wine or maker, that was the part that was really different. So we had taken the principles of what was from the original business plan,
stuck it in Portland and added a few people.
Stuck it in Portland and added some other winemakers.
Yeah.
Yep.
You mentioned the reception from the Portland public, and of course, a fairly new urban wine scene when you came into it that has obviously grown quite a bit.
Slow too.
It was slow. I mean, so Hip Chicks just celebrated 20 years, and so we're 10 years after that. It was slow at first. I think that combination of the recession.
Well, that and this this community has definitely been more beer and
then but spoiled with the Willamette Valley, right?
yeah, and like I almost, and I still feel like this a little bit. I almost feel like the Willamette Valley has been more attractive to the visitors that come here than it is the local Portland population. We have a really food interested, but the if you were to pick up what we're doing here and put it in like Bordeaux or something, I mean, everybody there is just drinking lots of Bordeaux. Here is a much more diversified, local community that's into cocktails and, we have more breweries per capita than anywhere else on the planet, and so we were definitely fighting for our little piece of the table. So I think a lot, especially our earlier guests that were coming here, were more, it was like a curiosity to see what it was about, but it wasn't like the breweries where there's, the new culty IPAs coming out and there's a line out the door and they're trying to see like who can get the big growler first.
But I also think that something that's interesting is that the Portland diner and people here, we love have options, right? That's something that's so beautiful about living in town is the amount of restaurants you can go to and the different scenes in all of the neighborhoods. And so having a collective that produced all different kinds of wines became sort of like a go-to for some people that weren't just interested in single variety, maybe just Pinot. So it's just something for everybody, because you go out with your friends, you have your friends that all like the same thing, and then you also go out to dinner with people that like different things too. And we sort of filled that niche for them. Our goal was to be like the gateway drug to the Willamette Valley. I always want people to go on a big wine trip. I want them to go to France. I want them to fly to Australia, New Zealand, go see something, go taste something delicious. I also know that takes money and time, and also a fair amount of confidence, because wine can be a little complicated sometimes, or at least we made it that way, that it's a little snooty, and it's a little expensive. And so if we can get them hooked, if they can just take an Uber or ride their bike here, then the opportunity, try half a dozen wines and feel happy, then maybe one day they will buy that plane ticket to somewhere else and fall in love with another region and gain that confidence. So that was one of the goals here, is to sort of spread the word a little bit and to demystify wine. You see, it's like it's all glass. You get to watch. So.
You talked earlier about your kind of winemaking philosophy and just sort of that's how people make wine, just the kind of natural or mostly natural style. I'm curious, what do you want people to take away from a bottle of your wine, a wine that you've made? What is the ultimate compliment, or what is the ultimate takeaway from one of your wines? My ultimate compliment is when I'm at a dinner party and I look over and somebody's trying to shake the last drop out of my bottle. That is like the ultimate. I want people to enjoy the whole bottle. Tom and I both think about the wines being interesting yet ultimately delicious. And timeless. And timeless. There needs to be a classic nature to them. That it's not about fads, because wine is not. I mean, there might
It's fun to make fad wines, and it, and you're just like, oh, we're just having fun with this. And because it keeps you thinking, and it keeps you experimenting, and it keeps things interesting.
And it's interesting, as I said earlier, to see the fashion of wine change, right? But at the end of the day, just making something really yummy that is good value, that has something you keep coming back to. It's like like a really good black dress.
I saw an interview recently with a very famous Rolling Stone writer, and he was talking about what makes certain artists and musicians, important throughout their entire lives. And he said that it's when a artist or a musician can continually sound like themselves in every album they put out, and it's them, that's a Rolling Stones song,
or it's a Talking Heads song, exactly. Or it doesn't matter the time.
It has its own sound, And I feel like that with our wines, like whenever I drink them, I know they're ours. Like there's something so familiar about them that even if it's a different grape variety, even if it's a different vintage, you know, I feel that way. I feel that they were definitely rougher around the edges in the beginning, and that
there's those fine-tuning our voice.
Exactly, but and there should be differences. You know, not every Rolling Stones album sounds the same, but there's a thread. There's a thread through it.
I talk about, like, I was different last year, and the year was different last year, so the wines year to year are going to be different. The sun, the moon, the stars were different last year, but you will always have our gentle imprint on it. You know, that's the way we ushered it to where it was going, and because without us, it wouldn't have made it, wouldn't be the way it is, right? And finding your voice, that's a hard thing to do, but that's the goal.
I'm curious about a word you used there. You said timeless for your wine, and that's something we don't actually hear that often in these interviews. People use a lot of words to describe their wine or what they want their wine to be, but timeless isn't one of them. So I'm curious what you mean exactly by that, and how do you create a timeless wine?
So I guess using again the music analogy of it is just like if you were to put on, you know, let's say Talking Heads.
Stop Making Sense. Let's do Stop Making Sense.
That to me would sound as fresh and original today as it did in 1982.
And our goal for our wines is to do the same.
And I think we want the wines to always have this capacity to not ever feel like they're trend-based, but they're wines that in any time and place they're delicious and interesting and reflective of who we are and the place we're from.
And the consumer can make that translation, you know, that they can connect with the wines that way.
So you've obviously had quite a few changes since you started here. What's next? What are you guys looking at future plans?
Well, I mean, the big one is what to do about the production of division going into the future, as we have, you know, between a lot of little things like renting spaces in other places and just being really creative with it, we've been able to continue to kind of grow division, but we're really up against that wall right now.
So that's for the next couple of years, that's our main goal, is to try and figure out how we can continue to grow this while having our hands on it completely.
The next evolutionary step of the division brand. And then, you know, for this place, it's what's next for here if we're not here, at least from a production perspective. And so these are the questions that we're asking ourselves right now. And what is, you know, because this place, where it is we think very special and provided a very special thing for the community that we are in. And so, you know, how are we going to steward that to its next step?
For me, it's creating some of our village wines and making them household names. I would really love for us to be able to grow our Beton production to the point where it can be really well recognized nationwide.
Yeah, it's like the Bonnie Do, like little cigar Volant. Like that's kind of always my wine that I think of, like with the Beton. Is, you know, that was a wine that Randall Graham grew, you know, throughout his entire career and became like what he was known for. And, you know, it was the first kind of like old school GSM wine that always had, you know, a little edgier, a little fresher characteristic than a lot of the California wines that were kind of in and out of vogue over the years. And I just feel like if we can ever get one of our wines to connect like that, and to, you know, that would be a real benchmark for
that would be a benchmark career. And so that's a goal for us. Also, to always keep playing. Tom and I make experiment wines every single year.
Most of them never see the light of day.
Yeah, that's not true. Most of them actually do.
Well, they don't go into they don't usually go into permanent bottling.
They don't go to permanent bottlings, but that's something that I know about us. You know, trying to master single varieties is always that's what we always want to do. But I also know us, and we will experiment till the day we die. So playing around with that, having fun, having Gamay become even more popular nationwide. Thank you, Myron Redford. Thank you, Doug Tennell.
The future is, and what kind of blows my mind is when we started this and we got Gamay, we could only find it on maybe less than 10 vineyards in the Willamette Valley. I mean, it's possible there's a few more, but like that's all we could figure out. When we started the I Love Gamay Festival 4 years ago,
16 producers.
It was 16 producers, and there was like maybe up to 14 or 15 vineyards. And we now have 5 different SKUs of Gamay. It represents 40% of our overall production. And then I went to the Oregon Wine Symposium just a few days ago and walked around, and we're planting another little block on one of the vineyards we leased. And so I wanted to chat with a few of the nurseries about just availabilities.
What's the planting looking like?
And they all said, man, you're like the 20th person to ask about Gamay today, and we are all every single one of them said they were sold out of Gamay through like 2022. And they're like, give me your name and your number and I'll tell you when we have it. And it's just like, to hear that,
it's
just
so cool.
crazy.
Come on, it's so cool. Yeah. It's great. Something I sat down, I got elected to the board of the Willamette Valley Wines Association, and I sat down in a board meeting and I said, Pinot is always going to be king, but maybe Gamay can be prince.
Yeah.
So that would be my goal, and to have Oregon Gamay be known as a thing more generally in the United States. That's a goal too. I'm going to fight that fight with Tom. We're going to try and make that happen. So we'll keep banging the Chenin drum, because Chenin's the most delicious.
Chenin's like the one that I personally love drinking so much. It's the one that probably makes the least sense for the Willamette Valley, though. It's
it needs a longer season. It needs a little bit of a drier day. It needs a little bit more fog. It needs,
But there's so much bright future for this region if we continue to try to do things and we get better at ecological practices here, and hopefully the rest of the world can kind of do that too, because there is something so fragile about the being able to grow here and in anywhere. And so, but I feel like that this area still has
so much potential.
Its story is still nowhere close to being written.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be in wine for sure.
In Oregon, for sure.
Well, I actually think globally also. I think that.
But I like where I'm at.
So do I. No, it's exciting. More people are drinking or are curious about wine. I think wine sales was actually down last year, but I think that more and more people are talking about wine. Younger people are drinking wine. There's more accessibility between.
White Claw, apparently, that's why we're down.
Low calorie.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
No, but I think that there's the upside and the potential for growth is incredible. So, yeah.
So as you look ahead for the state or for the region, what do you hope for for the next decade, and then maybe what are some of your concerns as you look ahead for the industry? What's on the horizon that maybe worries you a little bit?
Well, I think the things that worry me a lot are about climate issues here and how we're going to manage that as these summers get especially more dry and intense. With based on our just latitude, we're always going to have a certain ability to be cooler but the subtle increases, or even the not so subtle increases, create a real dramatic change in how we have to grow here. I feel like the human labor component of it is going to be continuing to be more challenging. There is a great need to do things in a certain way that's sustainable in the vineyards, and to have the people to be able to do that. And we have kind of put ourselves into a spot right now where that's becoming even more complicated. So I hope that we don't end up having to cheat the way we farm,
in order to make it, because we've chosen the wrong politics as a nation. So
and then we don't support the people that work so hard to grow here.
You and I also talk about sort of the Willamette Valley diversifying itself in terms of price point too. I think that's something that we're going to need to start to do. I think that there's a way for us to make really good Pinot Noir that is not $50 a bottle and is closer to $20 without going to the valley floor, but while maintaining our high-end bottlings at the same time. I think that we've done a really good job at being ultra premium, but I think that the future is a diversification of price point.
So the really interesting thing about this is, and this industry dealt with this as a big issue last year when certain California companies were marketing wines that were grown in different parts of Oregon, and
then they put the word Willamette on there, and then
everybody knows that because these people know that Oregon has brand value. Mm-hmm. Well, who built that brand value? The people that you mentioned, that you talked about when you first started this project, the Sokol Blossers, the Ponzis, the Campbells, and the Urats. All of these people were the ones who started that, and then others have built it, and other families who are invested into this region have built it. But as something becomes more popular, people who are good at extracting economic value out of brands are going to naturally see an opportunity here. So what I hope is
that we take our own opportunity.
That we do that, and that the people here. This is Kate when we were talking about with the Baton wine growing. That growth and that economic impact is led by Oregonians and people who are living here and invested here, and that we don't cede that to large businesses that are just
looking to extract money,
seeing that they have an easy way to make a dollar.
What does the industry look like in 10 years?
That's.
Well, I mean, there is going to be probably a fair degree of flat overall wine growth, and I think what Kate was saying is because of some of the growing advantages we have here, us doing a better job of diversifying our offerings can really help with that.
I imagine that we will see consolidation of brands, but I also think that
especially as the boomers start to really
But I also think that Oregon still has that pioneering spirit and is not 100% saturated by California. So I think that we will see the smaller brand do well in this area still. I think the opportunity is still there. I think that's one of the beauties of this region, is that even with consolidation, it's not going to completely flatten everything. So I think we'll probably see more waves like we have seen. So I think you and I are 5th or 6th gen. We're down there. But there's waves after. There's
4th or 5th.
4th, yeah. But then I imagine that we will see more waves, and I imagine that there's still areas to plant, and there are still small wineries that will not sell out, and we will see things change, but we will see some of the same too.
There's going to be probably a growth boom in places like the Columbia Gorge and other parts of Oregon that have a bit better economic entry point.
So you'll see Elkton probably explode.
Exactly.
The Columbia River Gorge also.
Because the Willamette Valley, is obviously an amazing spot. But its entry points are harder, and so when there is the 2 people or 3 people that are 30 years old right now are going to be 30 in 10 years, they may look beyond places that don't have as many barriers to entry. And I mean, that was partially for us too, why we kind of said California. For us, it's like you're just battling against much larger entities.
And it was still expensive 10 years ago, much more expensive now. But Oregon's barrier to entry is lower than the other West Coast, especially for the quality of lifestyle. I mean, no downer on Washington either, but the Willamette Valley's, I think, a way cooler place to live. So, literally.
So I'm sure this has happened to you at this point. This is I'm just sort of curious. If someone comes to you and asks you for words of wisdom, advice on getting into the industry, what do you tell
Raise
them?
twice as much money as you think you're going to need. Definitely put 2 doors in your winery. We only have 1. We can't have 2. That's what.
I mean, in general, persistence is really necessary. Like, this is not a career for somebody looking for something quick to happen. You
And
know,
I think that when you
go sell real estate if you want something that you're gonna.
you want to flip.
This is a like a lifetime, and so I met Jean-Louis Chauve in Hermitage last year for the first time, and this is like a very, very, very storied family that traces their winemaking roots back to the 11th century.
And he's not that old.
And he's about 50
50,
now.
yeah.
And he, incredibly kind guy, and you know, and makes a wine that is one of the most expensive and sought after wines on the planet, but very humble. And he was like, he's like, I don't do this for me. This is literally like what we plant here is going to be my grandparent or my grandchildren's, you know. And so you have to have a bit of the mindset when you do this that, you know, you're not going to be able to accomplish like that much, but you can create something that has a legacy well beyond you.
I think for me, I tell people just to be true to your nature. The word authentic is so overused these days, but to always remember that you should do what you think is right, and people will understand and taste that. And then always remember that it's to be shared. Drinking alone is called alcoholism. but that it's to be shared not only in the bottles but in the community. That this is it doesn't exist in isolation, and this experience is for everybody. It's for the people that grow the grapes. It's for the people that make the wine. It's for people that open the bottle. It's for the stories that go with it. And if you're not into that, then it's probably not for you. This is not a selfish existence.
So you mentioned the idea that you can't possibly accomplish everything. At the end of your career, as you look back, what will make it successful? What will make you say I had a successful?
I mean, in
run?
reality, I already feel like it's been more successful than in many ways than I thought. But then there's other ways that I feel like we still have a lot to go on. I mean, I'm incredibly proud of things like we sell wine to France. You know, like something I never even considered that was possible.
I told Tom that I was going to retire right after they took their first shipment. I was like, okay, we've arrived. It's done.
Fortunately, we didn't have enough money to do it. But yeah, no, you know, and this has been a very rewarding experience in many ways. But I think that now I hope I guess I used the word earlier, but I hope that we can take this brand we have and like anchor roots into it that can go beyond us
And share it even more, right?
Yeah. I would say I would feel very, you know, really excited if the next phase of the division and what we've created is something that has maybe even permanence beyond us.
The people around me that love me like to remind me that I've accomplished my goals in some way, but I never will feel that way, right? That's how it is. I'm extremely proud also of what we've done, and having people enjoy what we make is just enough to give yourself confidence to keep going and to keep trying even harder. There's no laurel resting, and it's just not a possibility because there's so much more to do, and it's I think we have goals. It's funny. It's like we have these long-term goals, but then we've got to, you know, make sure that the faucet's working today too. So, you know, it's like, and the toilet's not clogged. But it's really interesting that way to be in charge of your own destiny in a way. Yeah. But I'm incredibly proud of the last 10 years. A decade is an accomplishment for sure.
We timed this really well. I'm glad that worked out. That's excellent.
Thanks for doing it.
So that's all the questions that I have for you. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover today that we should have covered?
No.
Feel pretty good about it.
Feel pretty good.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for your time today, for your stories, for your thoughts.
I just think I think what would be really kind of cool to do with this is to, every 5 or 10 years come back to some of these folks and just see what's changed and see how much of the things that they've thought about then are either kind of relevant or have shifted or what. Because this can be a living memory to this region too that has more than just this one kind of place.
Can't wait to see the wrinkles. Great.
Great.
Thank you both
Thank you so much.
We really
We really
appreciate this.
appreciate your time. Yeah. Hope that was okay.